So my name is BonTempo, and I'm the Learning Technology Advisor for Jhpiego. And what that essentially means is that I look for ways to take ICTs kind of broadly defined and integrate them into our education and training approaches to support and strengthen them. I think this is a very interesting panel here because as implementers, as the folks kind of on the other side of the equation, our needs, our challenges, our requirements are different than some of the other folks that are here at this conference. We're not inventors of technology, we're not developers of applications necessarily. As you mentioned, for us, it's a tool, right? It's largely a tool, and it's one of many. So it's one tool in your BCC toolbox, it's one tool in my education and training toolbox, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one tool among many, many different things. And so what I think we really need to do is we have to identify the appropriate tools and technologies that really help us do the work that we're doing. So at Jhpiego, we've done a number of different things over the last few years. So, for example, in Afghanistan, for 2 years now, we've been using simple text messages sent out to providers after training. So they go back to their facilities. They're now sort of out there disconnected from each other, from their trainers, from their mentors, and we're able to communicate with them on a regular basis through something as simple as a text message to reinforce what they learned in training, to ensure that ensure that they are maintaining some competency and connecting with them and keeping that relationship open. We've done other things, or we're in the process of doing some other things in Tanzania right now with Java-enabled phones, so a bit of a step up on the technology ladder, where we're developing clinical care guidelines that help direct a community health worker through the protocols for delivering antenatal care, and in fact some clinical care at other points in stage of pregnancy as well. And in Zambia, we had a project where we used smartphones that had the HIV clinical guidelines loaded on them that a provider could have in their pocket at the point of care so that they could refer to them when they were standing there with a patient. So we've done things kind of along the whole spectrum of possible technologies, from the most basic phones and text messages up through a smartphone with a kind of advanced application interface. But again, in the end, it's really about what is appropriate. What really helps us meet our objectives? Well, of course, the term appropriate technology is a very loaded term. And depending on who you ask, they might talk about different things. Appropriate from the user's perspective, and the user could be any number of users. It could be the client, the care seeker. It could be the provider. And I think you mentioned the provider, but I feel like oftentimes the provider is forgotten about. A lot of folks tend to talk about connecting the client directly to some kind of centralized database of automated clinical care or something, but the providers are in that equation too, and we need to make sure that we don't forget about them. And then ministry and other users. So we need to think about that. We need to think about the technology that's available in the country where we're looking to implement this thing. We need to think about the infrastructure, and we need to think about support capacity too. So if something breaks, are they going to be able to fix it? Are they going to be able to replace it? Can they find someone to come and provide assistance? Do they have to fly somebody in from somewhere else, to do this? And of course, appropriate in terms of meeting your goals, the goals and objectives of your project. So, but anyway, it's all about appropriate technology and what really meets the needs. But for us at Jhpiego, and I think probably largely for most of us here, it's really about simple things, pervasive and ubiquitous technologies. There was somebody, early, I forget which session it was, but they were talking about how, technology moves fast. And I think to some extent it does, but it also doesn't move very fast in many of the countries where we're working. So there might be network coverage, but, for example, this $100 Android phone that was supposed to be available in Kenya, well, you can't buy one of those. You go out on the street, you can't find one. It's not there. And I don't know how long it'll be until it gets there. And when it does get there, I don't know who's going to necessarily be able to buy it. So technology is not necessarily moving at the pace in the context where we work that some folks would like to have you believe.
In conclusion?
Okay, this is the thing. All right, here's what I think we need. What we don't need, what we do need is process innovation, right? And by that, this is what I mean. We don't need new technology, at least us. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm speaking free. We don't need new tools. We don't need new fancy things. What we need to do is we need to take those things that are already there, and we need to find the new, creative, innovative ways to use them to support our work. So, Alan, your example of a woman calling a provider. That's the most simple, most basic thing. But it's not a technology innovation, it's a process innovation. You're integrating the use of the phone into the care process, right? There are a lot of pilots out there. We keep saying, proliferation of pilots. We don't need another ART adherence pilot, right? And we don't need to recreate the data, the evidence that you've generated, right? Or you either, or any of you, right? We need to take those things that we know work and that we know that we can do now, and integrate them and scale them and make a difference today. Something as simple as a phone call, and I'm going to quote you here, Adam, the killer app. If a provider, not just the patient, but if the provider can call somebody and get assistance when they're at the home, right, facilitating or supporting some emergency situation, that could be a killer app, not to use the term in but yeah, we need a new term for that. But
a loving app.
And in fact, this already happens. Again, this is already happening. Sorry, my last point. An anecdote. I actually talked to a nurse from Kenya, right, who said soon after she graduated, this was her first delivery. She'd never done it before, and she was anxious and a little scared, and she was pretty much on her own. But what did she do? She took her phone out of her pocket and she called her mother, who also happened to be a nurse. And her mother coached her through the delivery. And that's like just-in-time learning and performance support. It's telemedicine, but it's like the most simple of telemedicine. But that can make a huge difference. So I think we need to look at those things that we know already work, the simple things, just find new ways to use them and build them in and scale them up.